Prologue by Jackie Naaman Jones. Back in 1966, when I was 6 years old, I was in a movie. I played Debbie, a little girl whose parents take an ill-fated road trip through Texas and end up the victims of a desert-dwelling polygamous cult. The film was called Manos, The Hands of Fate. Over the years, it's been called the worst movie ever made. In 2005, by Entertainment Weekly, and Rotten Tomatoes gives it no stars. It's been described as a train wreck, the barometer by which all bad film is rated, for a number of very valid reasons: lousy production values, bad acting, and weak plot. Still, for me, Manos was a family film, not something like The Sound of Music, which came out the year before, but more like an actual home movie. My father, Tom Naaman, played the role of the Master, the evil cult leader. The Master's demon dog was played by our family pet Shanka, a sweet-natured Doberman. My mom, Jackie, made the costumes for the Master and his wives, and much of the other costuming came from our own closets. My dad's artwork and a lot of the set furniture came from our living room. Even our family car, a white 1964 Oldsmobile Dynamic 88, made an appearance. After its premiere and the cast and crew's subsequent public humiliation, the only good thing a contemporary reviewer could say about it was, "For an amateur production, the color came out very well." Manos disappeared into well-deserved oblivion. But Manos was still my family film and a point of nostalgia for me, considering how involved my whole family had been in its making. For years, long before personal computers and the internet, I tried to track it down. I called libraries, university film departments, film archives, any place I could think of that might be able to give me a lead, and I hit nothing but dead ends. Years passed. Life happened. By 1993, I was living in Northern California near Santa Rosa with my husband and 3-year-old son, embarking on a career as a professional artist specializing in faux finish painting. My dad, stepmom, and little sister lived in Lincoln City, Oregon, where Dad had a business doing handyman work with a rental management company. One Saturday in 1993, January, my phone rang. It was my father, which in itself was unusual. Dad isn't the sort to call me out of the blue. Usually I called him, or my stepmother would call me, and all conversation with him would be interpreted and transmitted through her. As a child, I had worshipped my dad. But after my parents' divorce, and as I entered my preteen years, my father's issues with depression took their toll on our relationship. When I was 17, he remarried, and for some reason my stepmother viewed me as a threat. And by 1993, we were many years into a tenuous truce. My relationship with Dad had settled into a sort of guarded comfort. But now, here was my dad, all excited, calling and saying, "You'll never believe what I just saw on television." He then proceeded to tell me an amazing story, made all the more so because it was something I've been searching for most of my life. The first and only time I'd seen Manos, The Hands of Fate, was November 15th, 1966, the night of the premiere at the Capri Theater in downtown El Paso. And now here was Dad telling me he'd just seen it on the Comedy Central channel on a program called Mystery Science Theater 3000. He'd been dozing off in his easy chair on that lazy Saturday afternoon watching MST3K, a show he loved because of Joel and the bots and the sheer ridiculousness of the whole premise. Sorry. It was an opportunity for him to just laugh and let the world go on doing its thing. He was nearly asleep when strangely familiar music jolted him from his doze. He opened his eyes to look at the screen and saw himself as he was in 1966 in that glorious master's robe my mother had sewed, with its big red hands on the black background. Stunned, he sat transfixed and watched the movie until the end, and then he called me. After we hung up, I immediately turned on the television to find the 800 number to call Comedy Central. I called, and someone named Matthew answered. I launched into my hastily rehearsed story, knowing it could be my only chance. You just showed a movie on Mystery Science Theater that my dad and I were in a long time ago. I've been searching for it all these years, and we can't believe you just put it on. What can I possibly do to get a copy? What's the name of the movie? Manos, The Hands of Fate. There was a long, long pause. I thought we were disconnected, or even worse, that he'd hung up. I held my breath, and then he burst out. Oh my God, are you Debbie? I thought for a moment this was a surreal dream. I pulled the phone from my ear and I gazed at it with my mouth hanging open. I couldn't have heard him right. I couldn't believe that anyone besides me would know or even care about Manos, The Hands of Fate. Matthew went on to excitedly tell me that the movie was a favorite there in the Manhattan HBO office, that in fact he had it there right on his desk. He said he'd be honored to send me a copy, and thanked me profusely for calling. A few days later, I received my bootleg VHS tape in the mail. I watched it once, put it away, and was content. My search was over, and Manos was found, and that was the end of it. Little could I have imagined where it would go from there. In the intervening years, Manos has taken on a life of its own. Its showing on MST3K introduced it to a whole new audience of cult film aficionados from all over the world. There's been a Manos musical, Manos Rock Opera of Fate, 2007 in Chicago and 2013 in Wichita. A parody play, Manos, The Hands of Fate, 2008 and 2013 in Portland, Oregon. A Manos puppet show, Manos, The Hands of Fate, 2011 in Seattle. And a short Manos documentary, Hotel Torgo, in 2004. There's a Kickstarter-funded restoration of the original print that was released October 15th, 2015. A Manos video game for the iPhone, and an article on Manos in the 2015 issue of Playboy magazine. All that notoriety and the wide reach of the internet has brought me in touch with the remaining cast and crew of the film, many of whom were happy to share their reminiscence of the worst movie ever made for this book. I've had the great honor to spend time getting reacquainted with Diane Marie, who played my mother Maggie. I've chatted with Bernie Rosenblum, the kissing teen in Car, and the Manos stuntman, and am good friends with Brian Jennings and his brother Benton, sons of William Brian Jennings, who played the sheriff, and who delivered my favorite line in the film: "Whatever it is you're not doing, go not do it somewhere else." More recently, I've talked with some of producer Hal Warren's family, a daughter from one marriage, a son from another, and several of Hal's grandkids. Not the least of these reacquaintances is with my dad, the master himself, still alive and kicking at age 80. Although he can be somewhat reluctant to talk about those days, he shared his memories with me, and they've helped shed light on not just Manos, but on our relationship as well. People sometimes ask me how I can remember so much about the making of Manos, the Hands of Fate, when I was so young, it was so long ago. The fact is, I recall bits and pieces of my childhood the way most people do, through memories and huge gaps. When a significant event becomes part of your family story, it's preserved in your memory, and Manos was my family's significant event. One day in the spring of 1966, my dad came home and, kneeling down to my 6-year-old eye level, asked me if I wanted to play the little girl in a movie he was doing. I had no idea what that would mean besides spending some real time with him. At first I said, I don't know. But when he said, don't worry, honey, if you don't want to, we can just find another little girl, I was hooked. No other kid was going to be spending that time with my dad. Manos may not have been the greatest movie ever made, but it was our movie. And if you're reading this, chances are Manos is your movie too. Welcome to my family.